There are stories that burn twice, once when they air, and once when they're rediscovered years later, glowing brighter than before. Some are short-lived, unfinished, almost forgotten, and yet something in them refuses to die. Firefly is one of those stories. It lasted only 14 episodes, 14 hours of television canceled, reordered, misunderstood, and tossed aside. But 2 decades later, it's still spoken of in the same breath as the greatest science fiction ever written. Not because of ratings or awards, but because it felt like something real. A world of dust and silence. A ship that rattled like an old truck, flying between forgotten worlds. And a crew who weren't heroes, but still found ways to do the right thing when it mattered most. This is the story of how it all happened. The mistakes, the miracles, the secrets that made Firefly more than a show. It became a legend. So sit back, open the airlock doors, and let's travel once more into the black. Because this is the tale of 20 big damn heroes. Number 20. Big damn heroes. Sir, the line that defined everything. It was never written in the script. It wasn't planned, or rehearsed, or carefully crafted by the writer's room. It was born in a moment. The scene was supposed to be standard. Malcolm Reynolds, ex-soldier turned captain, bursts in to rescue his crew. He stands before an alliance officer, gun still smoking. And instead of giving the stiff procedural reply on the page, Nathan Fillion took a breath and said 4 words that changed the soul of Firefly. Big damn heroes, sir. Short, rough, but perfect. Everyone froze. On set, silence. Then laughter, the good kind. The kind that tells you something real just happened. Joss Whedon didn't edit it, didn't polish it. He just nodded and said, "That's Mal." From that day forward, those 4 words became an emblem. Printed on t-shirts, whispered at conventions, carved into the hearts of fans. They weren't just funny. They summed up the entire show. A band of misfits, never meant to be heroes, doing what heroes do anyway. The line was lightning in a bottle, a moment of improvisation that would outlive every set piece and every canceled episode. Because that's what Firefly was, not scripted perfection, but spontaneous truth. Number 19. Inara Serra, the woman who terrified a network. Long before Firefly was a cult phenomenon, she was the calm at its center. Inara Serra. Elegant, composed, always soft-spoken, yet impossible to ignore. To first-time viewers, she seemed the archetype, the mysterious woman aboard a ship full of rough men. But Inara wasn't a lover or a victim, she was a companion. In Firefly's universe, that word carried a new meaning. A high-class courtesan, trained, educated, protected by law. A woman with the right to choose her clients and the right to refuse them. And in the early 2000s, that terrified Fox television. Executives demanded that her profession be obscured, that the dialogue soften, that scenes showing her autonomy be rewritten. They feared empathy not for her pain, but for her power. But Joss Whedon saw Inara differently. He wanted her to stand as a symbol of dignity. Someone who redefined moral boundaries, who carried both grace and rebellion in a single glance. And she did. Played by Morena Baccarin, Inara became Firefly's silent revolution. A woman unashamed of her identity, respected by her crew, and treated not as a problem, but as part of the family. It's ironic. The thing Fox feared most, the idea that viewers might respect a courtesan, is exactly what made her unforgettable. Number 18. The Doctor Who almost was Neil Patrick Harris as Simon Tam. Imagine this. A young doctor, haunted by guilt, risking everything to protect his sister. That was Simon Tam, played by Sean Marr. But it almost wasn't. In the early casting days, another name stood on the edge of the Serenity's ramp, Neil Patrick Harris. Yes, that Neil Patrick Harris still remembered then as Doogie Howser, the prodigy doctor from the late 80 seconds. He auditioned for Firefly, and he was good, but the producers hesitated. Harris carried too much history. Viewers still saw him as the teenage genius with a stethoscope and a punchline. Simon Tam, by contrast, was something quieter. A man on the run, living in fear, constantly looking over his shoulder at the system that destroyed his family. They worried that audiences wouldn't see Simon, they'd see Doogie in space. So the part went to Sean Marr. He brought gravity, melancholy, a fragile kind of strength. He didn't smile often. And when he did, it looked like a man remembering what hope used to feel like. But in another timeline, somewhere in the multiverse of TV that never was, there's a version of Firefly where Neil Patrick Harris plays the Doctor. And maybe that version shines differently, but not better. Because in the one we got, Sean Marr's Simon Tam feels real, haunted, human, perfectly broken. Number 17. The Woman Who Never Was, Firefly's Lost Inara. When you think of Inara Sera, you picture Morena Baccarin. The voice, the poise, the quiet sadness. But once before filming ever began, the role belonged to someone else. Her name was Rebecca Gayheart. She filmed the pilot. The dailies came in, and something didn't fit. No one could name it exactly. No bad acting, no wrong lines, just a hollow space where chemistry should have been. In Hollywood, they call it the intangible. And so, with days left before production continued, the painful decision was made: recast. Every frame of Rebecca's footage was scrapped. Enter Morena Baccarin. When she stepped on set, it clicked immediately. Her presence changed the air. The ship felt balanced again. She was quiet, elegant, and strangely sad. A woman who seemed to know she belonged, yet feared she never truly would. And that's how Inara was born. It's strange to think that in some other world, Firefly starred Neil Patrick Harris as Simon Tam and Rebecca Gayheart as Inara Sera. A version lighter, cleaner, and probably far less haunting. Sometimes, perfection hides behind painful choices, and Firefly's heart began to beat the moment Morena Baccarin walked on set. Number 16. The boy named Zach, Firefly's youngest passenger. There's a moment in the episode Safe, a flashback to Simon and River as children. A skinny boy stands by his sister's bed, eyes wide, full of worry. That boy was Zac Efron, 13 years old, before the musicals, before the fame. Just a kid trying out for a part in a show he thought was about doctors in space. His scene lasted less than a minute. No drama, no action, just quiet love between siblings who'd one day be torn apart by science and war. He didn't know then that those few seconds would follow him for the rest of his career. But fans remembered. Because Firefly fans always remember. In interviews years later, Zach smiled when asked about it. He said, "That was my first real set. I didn't know what I was doing, but everyone was kind." And maybe that's the secret, Firefly's kindness, hidden beneath its guns and grit. Even in 30 seconds of screen time, it managed to leave a mark that outlasted whole seasons of other shows. Number 15. Star Wars in the Black. The hidden ship. You might have missed it. Most people did. Watch closely in the dark between stars as Serenity glides across the screen. And there, just for a moment, a familiar silhouette drifts by. A Corellian freighter. A rebel shuttle. A ship that looks an awful lot like something from Star Wars. It wasn't a coincidence. The visual effects team, all lifelong sci-fi fans, couldn't resist the temptation. They slipped Star Wars ships into Firefly's space scenes. Tiny Easter eggs, invisible to casual viewers, but impossible to unsee once spotted. No announcements, no nods, just a silent tribute, a wink from one universe to another. Fans later joked that the Millennium Falcon had wandered into the wrong galaxy, that maybe Han Solo took a wrong turn at Coruscant and ended up chasing a job from Captain Mal. It was harmless mischief, but also something deeper. A quiet acknowledgement that Firefly was part of a lineage, the dream of freedom in space, passed from one generation of storytellers to the next. Number 14. The Alliance wore second-hand armor. Remember the first time you saw the Alliance soldiers? The gleaming helmets, the sharp angles, the way they moved precise, almost mechanical. It felt familiar, and it should, because those uniforms weren't designed for Firefly at all. They were leftovers. Straight from the 1,997 sci-fi satire Starship Troopers. With a limited budget and a growing list of needs, Firefly's costume team made a decision born of necessity: reuse. They borrowed and modified the troopers' armor, repainting, weathering, reshaping, What they didn't realize was that it fit too well. The militaristic coldness of the Alliance matched perfectly with the hollow propaganda of Starship Troopers. Two worlds united by a shared idea, the machine of order crushing the soul of individuality. By saving money, Firefly accidentally created a perfect metaphor, a borrowed uniform representing borrowed ideals. And every time an Alliance soldier steps onto the screen, the echo of another empire follows behind him. Number 13. Serenity, a ship you could walk through. Most sets are illusions, rooms built on separate sound stages, stitched together by clever editing. Not Serenity. Firefly's ship was real, 2 full levels, connected by working staircases, corridors, and bulkheads. You could walk from cockpit to engine room without ever stepping off set. The crew didn't act in Serenity, they lived in her. You could hear the boards creak, the metal hum. Every dent, every stain had a story. This wasn't just design, it was philosophy. Whedon wanted the audience to feel that this was home, cramped, cluttered, and loved. When Firefly was canceled, the set was torn down. But when the movie Serenity was greenlit, there was no hesitation. They rebuilt it exactly the same. Because some spaces aren't just backdrops. They're living memories. And Serenity wasn't a ship. She was the 10th member of the crew. Number 12. The Order That Killed the Show. It's one of television's cruelest ironies. In 2002, TV networks didn't believe audiences could handle slow beginnings. They wanted instant clarity, instant stakes. And so, when Joss Whedon delivered the Serenity pilot, a 2-hour masterpiece that introduced the world, the war, the crew, Fox said no. Too slow, they said. Not enough action. They demanded a new first episode. Something with guns and explosions. Something simpler. That episode became The Train Job. But The Train Job was written to assume viewers already knew who everyone was because it was meant to follow the pilot, not replace it. So when the series premiered, audiences were lost. They didn't know what a brown coat was, didn't understand the war, or why Mal was so bitter. They saw a world without its introduction and didn't stay long enough to learn to love it. Ratings fell, and the network pointed to those numbers as proof that Firefly had failed. It's like tearing the first chapter out of a book, then complaining that the story makes no sense. Years later, when the DVD box set restored the correct order, something magical happened. People finally understood, and love poured in from every corner of the world. Firefly hadn't failed. It had been sabotaged. Number 11. Summer, the on-set joke that never died. Every show has inside jokes. Firefly had one word. Whenever someone forgot a line, dropped a prop, or missed a cue, the crew would shout, "Summer." It was a teasing tribute to Summer Glau River Tam, whose lines were famously impossible. Disjointed, poetic, full of broken logic and sudden genius. While everyone else had scripts that made sense, Summer had riddles. She'd speak as if her mind lived 2 seconds into the future, or 5 years in the past. Delivering those lines was an act of bravery, so the cast made her their scapegoat in jest, their way of saying, "We love you, but you're terrifying." Years later, at conventions, the joke lived on. Someone would fumble a mic, a fan would call out, "Summer," and the whole crowd would laugh. Because behind every haunting line River Tam ever spoke, there was a young actress shouldering an impossible role, and a family of castmates who knew it. Number 10. The lost episode River, Tam's ghost. Every mystery in Firefly has a pulse behind it. None stronger than River Tam. The way she whispered to herself, the way she seemed half awake, half lost, always on the edge of something unspeakable. But what if we told you her story was never finished because one episode simply vanished before it was filmed? It was to be called Dead or Alive, a script half written, never shot. An episode meant to dive straight into the Academy, the secret program that broke River's mind. We would have seen the cold laboratories, the sharp lights, the voices that carved genius out of sanity. We would have understood her terror of the Alliance not as paranoia, but as memory. But Firefly was canceled before the cameras ever rolled. Only fragments of the episode remain outlines, half-finished pages, rumors whispered at conventions. And so, River Tam remains incomplete. Her pain, her brilliance, her fractured sentences, all we have are glimpses. Maybe that's fitting. Some ghosts are more powerful when they never quite finish speaking. Number 9. The $100,000 model that could fly. When Serenity soared across the black, she didn't shimmer like computer graphics. She shuddered. She moved with weight. That's because Serenity was real, a handcrafted 3-foot model built for nearly $100,000. In the early 2000s, most shows relied entirely on CGI, but Firefly's team wanted something tangible, something light could touch. Every time the camera panned across Serenity's hull, you saw the reflection of an actual lamp, not a digital guess. That's why it feels right. The model makers built her to look tired scars across the hull, mismatched panels, a ship that had flown too long without rest. And somehow, that physical model captured the heart of the series. Not sleek adventure, but survival. When the show was canceled, the model didn't vanish. Fans tracked it down, displayed it, replicated it. Some built their own. Each one, a tiny rebellion against time. Because for the people who loved Firefly, Serenity wasn't just a ship. She was a promise that craftsmanship still mattered even when the world moved too fast for it. Number 8. Earth that was the silence beneath it all. There's something eerie about Firefly's universe. Something you feel, but rarely hear spoken aloud. Where is Earth? Every star system in Firefly hums with life, but humanity's birthplace is gone. Not destroyed, not mourned, just absent. The characters mention it in passing. Earth that was. A name heavy with loss and distance. Joss Whedon made a deliberate choice. He didn't want flashbacks or monuments. He wanted silence, an entire civilization that moved on and never looked back. That silence is what gives Firefly its gravity. Every dusty planet, every forgotten moon, they all feel like echoes of a home people stopped believing in. Maybe Earth died. Maybe it was abandoned. Maybe it still turns somewhere, blue and empty. It doesn't matter. What matters is that humanity kept drifting. Still building ships that break down, still fighting wars for control of places that were never really home. And maybe that's the most human thing of all. Number 7. Firefly in Orbit, the DVD that went to space. Some stories are born to stay on Earth. Firefly wasn't one of them. In 2007, NASA astronaut Stephen Ray Swanson packed a few personal items aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis. Among them, a complete DVD set of Firefly. He brought it with him to the International Space Station. And in the quiet of low orbit, floating above the planet that Firefly had already left behind, he watched it. A story about drifters in space, now drifting through actual space. When word spread through the fan community, the symbolism hit hard. A show canceled for being too weird for television now watched among the stars. In that moment, Firefly achieved something no network could control. It became real. It didn't need new episodes or approval ratings. It just needed someone to carry it high enough to touch the sky. Number 6. Nathan Fillion's Hidden Shrine. There's a secret tucked inside Serenity's cargo bay. Most fans never noticed it during the original broadcast, but sharp eyes caught it years later. Behind a few stacked crates, half hidden in shadow, stands a figure encased in carbonite. Han Solo. That wasn't an accident. Nathan Fillion, lifelong Star Wars fan, proud nerd, and walking embodiment of charming rogue energy, asked the crew to hang a replica of Han frozen in carbonite inside the set. It never appears clearly in frame, but it's there, a silent homage to the character who paved the way for Mal Reynolds. Han Solo was the prototype. Malcolm Reynolds was the evolution. Both men smuggled, quipped, shot first when they had to, and both had hearts far better than they'd admit. So, on that battered old ship, Han and Mal shared the same space. Two rebels, separated by galaxies, bound by spirit. And somewhere, you can imagine them swapping stories over illegal cargo and cheap whiskey. Number 5. The accidental crossover of dreams. Firefly and Star Wars. One, a cultural empire. The other, a cult that refused to die. But if you look closely enough, they intertwine not through official partnerships, but through affection. The Star Wars ships that drift quietly through Firefly's sky. The Han Solo figure frozen in the background. The way Serenity moves, not like a sleek cruiser, but like the Millennium Falcon's younger, scrappier cousin. Firefly was never meant to imitate Star Wars. It was born from the same dream, a dream that freedom matters, that a ship can be a home, that heroes can be smugglers, and smugglers can be heroes. When fans spotted the Easter eggs, it wasn't mockery, it was kinship. Firefly was tipping its hat to the story that taught millions to look up at the stars and imagine more. And maybe, somewhere in the great expanse of imagination, Serenity and the Falcon pass each other in the dark. Two ships nodding in mutual respect before vanishing back into legend. Number 4. The family-friendly disaster. When Firefly was in early development, Fox had a vision. Not Joss Whedon's vision, their own. They wanted something light. Something family-friendly. Something you could air at 8 p.m. without scaring advertisers. So they made suggestions. Make Malcolm Reynolds happier. Make the world cleaner. Tone down the politics. Remove the war trauma. In short, make Firefly safe. But Whedon refused. He didn't want polished uniforms and perfect smiles. He wanted scars. A captain who had seen hell and no longer believed in shiny causes. Mal was supposed to be broken, and that was the point. Firefly wasn't a show about winning. It was a show about living after you've lost, about how you keep going when the cause you bled for is gone. Fox wanted an adventure. Whedon wrote a requiem. And that clash of visions, art versus safety, honesty versus marketability, is the oldest story in Hollywood. But Firefly, even in defeat, remained honest. And that's why it survived. Number 3. The Ghost of the Civil War. From the first frame, Firefly feels heavy with memory. The worn coats, the tattered flags, the quiet anger in Mal's eyes. That wasn't accidental. Whedon based Firefly's emotional core on the aftermath of the American Civil War, not the politics, but the feeling. The sense of loss, displacement, and bitterness that haunted the defeated South. Malcolm Reynolds is the archetype of the soldier who lost faith. Once loyal, now cynical. Once idealistic, now just trying to get by. The Browncoats were his confederacy, not evil, not good, just human, fighting for independence, losing, and living under a government that promised order but delivered control. That's why Firefly never romanticizes victory. It's a story told from the losing side, and that's rare. Most sci-fi tales celebrate the rebellion that wins. Firefly asks, what happens when the rebellion doesn't? It's a question older than America and newer than tomorrow. And that's why it lingers. Number 2. The failure that became a cult. When Firefly aired, it failed. The numbers were bad. The time slot was cursed. Episodes ran out of order. By every traditional measure, Firefly was dead. But something strange happened. After cancellation, sales of the DVD exploded. Fans started organizing viewing parties. Quotes began to spread. Can't stop the signal. People didn't just watch Firefly. They belonged to it. It became a password, a shared secret. If someone quoted a line shiny or big damn heroes and someone else answered, you knew you'd found your people. Firefly became a cult not because it was trendy, but because it felt personal. It wasn't just a show. It was a wound that everyone wanted to heal together. And maybe that's what cult classics really are. Things the world rejected before they had time to finish speaking. Number 1. The Legend of 14 Hours. Some series run for a decade. Firefly lasted 14 episodes. And yet, 20 years later, people still whisper its name with reverence. Why? Because those 14 hours are dense with life. No filler, no padding. Every scene builds a world. Every silence reveals a wound. It's the story of a family that wasn't supposed to exist. Outlaws who made their own code, their own corner of the universe, and tried to hold on to it for as long as the engine held together. Firefly ended before it could decline, before the stories grew tired, before it became ordinary. And maybe that's why it endures, because it left too soon, like a song that cuts off mid-chorus, echoing in your head long after it's gone. It burned bright, then it was gone, but the light never faded. Closing narration. Firefly wasn't just a show about space. It was a show about home, about finding one, when the universe doesn't offer you one. It was a story about broken people who still believed in something better, about a ship that kept flying long after reason said it shouldn't. And maybe that's what keeps us coming back. Because in some way, we all live on ships like Serenity, patched together, half running, full of ghosts and laughter and scars. We're all out there, somewhere in the black, trying to find our own crew, our own sky, our own tiny patch of freedom. And as long as there's someone out there who still remembers those words, big damn heroes, sir, then Firefly isn't gone. It's just waiting for the next sunrise.